Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Today I'm going to be talking about Follower by Seamus Heaney, and I'm going to read through it first. So it starts off by saying, "My father worked with a horse plough, his shoulders globed like a full sail strung, between the shafts and the furrow, the horse strained at his clicking tongue. An expert, he would set the wing and fit the bright steel-pointed sock. The sod rolled over without breaking at the head rig with a single pluck of reins. The sweating team turned round and back into the land, his eye narrowed and angled at the ground, mapping the furrow exactly. I stumbled in his hobnailed wake, fell sometimes on the polished sod. Sometimes he rode me on his back, dipping and rising to his plod. I wanted to grow up and plough, to close one eye, stiffen my arm. All I ever did was follow, in his broad shadow, round the farm. I was a nuisance, tripping, falling, yapping always, but today it is my father who keeps stumbling behind me and will not go away." So before I delve into the proper analysis of the poem, I'm going to discuss the context behind it. And Seamus Heaney, he was born in 1939 and he passed away in 2013. And for those who know their history, would know that World War II started in 1939, which meant that a bit of his childhood would have been affected by that. But he grew up on a farm, so his family weren't part of that bustling city scene and part of London where majority of the people affected by the war were. But growing up on a farm, through the poem, he then discusses his rural life and childhood and his childhood experiences, and we see that through the farm jargon and like the rural feeling that we get from the poem. And with the title Follower, it's quite, you can link it to him growing up on a farm, as sheep follow the shepherd and he followed his father, and so it shows how he idolizes his father and really wants to be like him. Back then and even now, boys want to follow in their father's footsteps, which is ultimately what the poem is about, and his journey in him attempting to follow his father. So the first stanza, which says, "My father worked with a horse plough, his shoulders globed like a full sail strung, between the shafts and the furrow, the horse strained at his clicking tongue." The whole poem starts with a possessive phrase, which is "my father," and I don't think that the narrator meant this in an authoritative, possessive way, but rather in like a proud sense, like he's my father. And Seamus Heaney, the poet, had something to be proud of with his father, his own father, who farmed 50 acres of land, which is equivalent to 4 times the whole of Windsor Castle, which is, as you can imagine, a lot. And in the first stanza and throughout the poem, the narrator constantly says his shoulders, his clicking tongue, his eye, his hobnailed wake. And it shows that he acknowledges his father for doing a lot, which shows that he commends what his father was constantly doing, which shows that he had like a lot of respect for his father in terms of their relationship. The narrator only uses the pronouns his in the first 3 stanzas in referring to his father, but then in the 4th stanza he uses the personal pronoun I for the first time, and the first line of the 4th stanza says, "I've stumbled in his hobnailed wake." And him stumbling is a complete contradiction to his father's. In the 3rd stanza, it says his eye narrowed and angled at the ground, mapping the furrow exactly. And even before that, nothing about his father falling or anything like that. He even says in the 2nd stanza, the 7th line, "The sod rolled over without breaking." He did everything absolutely perfectly. So the first time the narrator mentions himself, he's nothing like his father. Even with the hobnailed wake, it's something that it's a piece of metal that would be at the bottom of the shoe for like grip, and the narrator clearly needs that grip. He still needs that grip, which shows that he isn't fully matured yet. He still, even though his father's using it, he stumbled in the grip. That he stumbled still in the grip of his father. The verb stumbled is also past tense, so we still, as readers, we still have hope that he can become like his father. And then in the second to last stanza, he then says, I wanted to grow up and plough. Him wanting to grow up and plough does not necessarily mean he literally wants to grow up and plough. It may, but ploughing isn't just about farming. It can also connotate to wanting to find something in you and that brings out the best of you, because ploughing is the preparation for a plant's life. And so the narrator is wanting to grow up and plough in preparation for his own life, because he said, all I ever did was follow. And that sentence is also the first time the narrator mentions the title, which is somewhat significant. And the last stanza says, I was a nuisance, tripping, falling, yapping always. But today it is my father who keeps stumbling behind me and will not go away. So the switch from past tense to present tense is, I would say, somewhat of a reality check, because we kind of see like a timeline now. His father is not the workman that he used to be, and he's taken the place of his son, because his son was, at first, he was the one stumbling. Now his father is the one that keeps stumbling. Now I'm going to talk about the structure, which we can physically see is 6 tightly ordered quatrains, and this means that there is 6 4-lined stanzas, and that shows, the narrator has control over what they're saying and like how they put it out there. But this is contrasted in the enjambment, which overflows and shows that they seem to have, on the outside, they have that control, but in reality, their emotions are somewhat taken over. The control of the stanza length and quantity also reflects the perfection that his father had that he couldn't keep up with. And so this is him sort of admiring his father in a way that he physically couldn't, which shows how much respect he has for his father. The attempt in the narrator trying to be like his father is also shown in the rhyme scheme. The mixture of full rhyme and half rhyme shows how he cannot keep up with his father's perfection and his speed and his skill with the iambic tetrameter. So in an attempt to keep up with his father, he uses full rhyme with strung and tongue, sock and pluck, round and ground, sod and plod, arm and farm, today and away. But then the half rhyme ruins that, as it ruins the flow of the poem when you say, my father, when the narrator says, my father worked with a horse plough, his shoulders globe like full sail strung between the shafts and the furrow. It doesn't flow like a fully rhymed poem does, which kind of breaks the skill of his father and like what he's really attempting to do. However, the narrator does show maturity in terms of how the enjambment stops and how he includes more punctuation to control his emotions. At first, there's quite a bit of enjambment in between the second and third stanza, but then when it starts to become about him, he then adds commas at the ends and semicolons and full stops, and that shows how he's becoming quite mature. But at the end, there is a reoccurrence of enjambment, which shows that he's grown to a certain extent, but he hasn't become perfect and skilled like his father has. And this shows that he is attempting to be like his father, like his parents, like most of us are, but he is failing. He's he's a new, as he says in the last stanza, I was a nuisance, tripping, falling, yapping always, but today it is my father who keeps on stumbling behind me and will not go away. The last stanza is a dream and a nightmare because the caesura right in the middle of it shows that change and separation and the independence of the son, which is great, but it's a nightmare because now his father is now like him, who keeps stumbling, which is unfortunately a harsh reality. Especially at the end of the poem, it makes it so ambiguous because we don't know what the stumbling is. What does stumbling mean? Is he stumbling into his grave? Is he limping? So it is incredibly ambiguous, and it shows how we don't know when our fathers will start stumbling behind us. And I just realised throughout all this, I've said the son, and I don't actually know if it's a son, but with the context behind it and the mindset of the people then, it was most likely a son working on the farm. And I feel like those were the main points that touched to me, but there's still a lot in there. And yeah, thank you.